May I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm son of Yisrayl, Yahshua, and I would like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for Sabbath services.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is son of Yisrayl, Deacon Buffalo Bill Hawkins, and I would like to serve you as a priest starting very soon. It's a privilege and honor to present to you the sons and daughters of Yisrayl now entering the sanctuary. I now present one of the sons of Yisrayl, Yedidyah Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech today is, What Can We Expect from the Creator Yahweh if we turn from sin and start keeping Yahweh's laws? What can we expect? I have a quote here. It says, the first thing you can expect when you make up your mind to repent is you will be put in contact with Yahweh if indeed you are also waiting or wanting to convert to Yahweh's way. Before repentance of your sins, you cut yourself off from Yahweh. Now, if you can turn over to Isaiah 59, 1 through 2. It's on page 567. Page 567, and it says, Behold, Yahweh's hand is not shortened, that it cannot save, nor his ears heavy, that it cannot hear. But your own iniquities have separated you from your Father, and your own sins have caused him to turn his face from you. He will not listen. And so when we cut ourselves off from Yahweh, and we don't keep his laws, we cut ourselves off from Yahweh's protection. Yahweh is no longer protecting us. We have no protection with us. And if you can turn over to Yochanan, 1 Yochanan 3, verse 4, 7, and 8. And that's on page 965. And it says, Whoever commits sin transgresses also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. Little children, let no man deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous. He who commits sin is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of Yahweh was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. So, if you commit sin, you're of the devil. If you practice Yahweh's laws, you're of Yahweh. And when you do commit sin, you should immediately come to the priest and do your confessions and ask Yahweh for forgiveness of the sin that you commit. So you'll no longer be cut off. And you will receive the protection and the healing that comes from the 613 laws. I have another quote here. It says, So it's a scriptural fact, the religions that continue to break one or more laws have no salvation to offer. They will burn, and as Hebrews 10:27 says, for your notes, it says, the religions, continuing on here, it says, the religions pretend to heal people of sickness and diseases. But it has been a proven fact, when we study the words of Yahshua, we see that healing takes place when one is converted, which means they must repent of their sins first. So when you repent of your sins, that's when the healing begins. Once you begin to keep Yahweh's laws, Yahweh's 613 laws, the 10 commandments, once you start to keep those, that's when the healing begins. And if you can turn over to Exodus 15:26, and that's on page 58. It's on page 58, and it says, and said, If you will diligently listen to the voice of Yahweh your Father and do what is right in his sight, and will give ear to his laws and keep all his statutes and judgments, none of these diseases which the Egyptians brought upon themselves will you put upon yourself, for I am Yahweh Rapha, your healer. And it says, so if we believe in Yahweh, the Creator, then we will be healed, and that's where our protection will come from. So what can we expect from the Creator Yahweh if we repent of sin and start to practicing Yahweh's laws? We can expect true healing and protection, and it only comes from the house of Yahweh. And with that, if y'all please stand. I'd like to turn it over to son of Yisrayl and Nabiah for prayer.
With that, it's a privilege and honor to turn over to the next speaker, the great Deacon Tawakyah Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Now, I want to start off by just reminding everyone that every single week, Pastor puts out these press releases. Every single week, that's something that we can go back and read. And last week, I don't have the one from this week, but last week, it was entitled, "The Vatican does not allow the Pope to teach morality. Yada, the Vatican holds the scepter as lawgiver to the nations." So that's what I'm going to talk about, morality, and how we've seen it slowly decline in our society today. Now, due to the lack of morals, which morals are basic rules that everyone can agree upon, and due to the lack of rules, the world is seeing chaos. They're seeing wars, they're seeing riots, they're seeing fighting amongst each other. They're seeing children younger and younger committing suicide because of bullying. We're seeing these things because there are no rules. Now, you can easily get these rules, these morals, these laws, through the Holy Scriptures. The churches have gotten away from that, though, and focused more on things like entertainment and keeping the congregations full and keeping the offerings coming in. Remember, the love of money is a root of all evil, and that's what they love money. That's all they want. That's all they're focused on is money and entertainment. Remember what Pastor said? They go on vacations, and it's a vacant spot in their mind. Because they're not learning anything. They're actually losing knowledge there. Now, morals need to be brought back to the dinner tables, schools, and places of business in order to surround society with basic moral principles that govern all life. And that's something that Pastor said on PR Web. There's this article. It says, Hawkins says the subject of morality is not a priority. Priority teaching in today's world as the results are evident. That's something that he said. He said morals need to be brought back to the dinner tables, schools, and places of business in order to surround society with basic moral principles that govern all life. That sounds a lot like a scripture that we've heard over and over again. So if you can turn over to page 152 in your book of Yahweh, it's Deuteronomy 6, verse 7, page 152, and it says, "And you must teach them diligently to your children, and talk about them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." So notice, there should be no time when we aren't teaching ourselves these things, when we aren't teaching the children these things. We constantly need to be doing this, because remember, repetition is a great thing whenever you're trying to learn. Now, morality began to rapidly decline after knowledge started to increase in 1934. And that's something else Pastor talks a lot about in this press release last week that he sent out, is about the increase in knowledge and how they began to more focus on entertainment instead of teaching the children, like I was just talking about. Now, since television and the internet were introduced, society has been on a downward spiral, and the people seem to be solely focused on entertainment. So all we're seeing is entertainment. Now, the Vatican will not allow morals to be taught to the children for one reason, because it takes away their freedom. It takes away their freedom, and it's not freedom that you're freedom. It's freedom to do whatever they want. Okay, and Pastor, he's given plenty of sermons about this, but in the third book of Israel, chapter 27, verse 81. Verse 82, it says, it's not freedom from the laws. They have plenty of laws. They pass laws all the time. It says if you notice on the news this week, they're trying to pass laws to stop certain people from having certain rights to do certain things. They do this all the time. This brings hardship on many when they pass laws against certain people. They are trying to pass laws right now that they can use against you and the house of Yahweh. He also says in verse 83, President Bush is trying to pass a law right now to draft both boys and girls into the armed forces. You're going to be caught up in this unless you pay attention and stay very close to Yahweh. You're going to be caught up in it, and one day you'll wish that you had paid attention. And he says it's not freedom from the laws, but freedom from Yahweh's laws that they want. They don't want freedom from the laws out in the world. They want freedom from Yahweh's laws. They want to do whatever they want. They want a license to sin, do whatever feels right in their heart. He says they don't want to follow the pattern of prevention. Okay, so they'd rather go through it and then try to find a cure instead of not even going through it at all. This is what Pastor's saying there. Now, in this press release, I want to read a little bit out of it, because the path that mankind is taking right now is eventually going to lead with nuclear war. Okay, and there's a doctor in this press release, and it's just back in December 7th of 2015 when this came out, but he says, this is Dr. Theodore Postal. He's a former advisor to the U.S. Chief of Naval Operations and professor at MIT, nuclear technology, and also a nuclear technology expert. Now he says the ballistic missile, because they asked how long does it take for a nuclear missile to reach its target. And he said the ballistic missile could be fired basically within 50 or 60 seconds. Okay, more or less after the alert being given to the operators. So from the time that they are told that to arm them to the time they fire could be within 50 or 60 seconds. The rocket will ignite, then it would release warheads. The warheads would float into the near vacuum of space under the influence of gravity and momentum, and in about 20 to 28 minutes would arrive at their targets, re-enter the atmosphere, and explode. Notice, within 20 to 28 minutes, so under 30 minutes. And he says, so the world could be basically finished off in anywhere from half an hour to an hour upon arrival of these warheads. Most nuclear warheads would be delivered in a very short time, probably within half an hour or an hour interval. So notice that. He says the world could basically be finished off within the hour. Okay? That's what they've reached to, and today with the knowledge being increased. Destroying the world within an hour. Now, Pastor also says in this article, he says, the Pope who takes orders from the city that sits or judges all the nations on the 7 hills of Rome says morals should not be taught to our children because it takes away their freedom. And he says the word Vatican means divining serpent. This agency does not want anyone exposing their sin in Rome, as was done in the same as was done when this same religion controlled Jerusalem and the house of Yahweh, which name they changed to temple in order to hide the name Yahweh. They did many other evils as well. He starts talking about the Coptic Catholics and also Korah, how he was the first Pope of Israel, and he said he was rebelling against Moshe. But if we go down couple pages, he's reading from 1 Samuel 8, verse 4 through 8, but I just want to focus on verse 7. It says, Yahweh answered Samuel and said, listen to all the words the people speak to you. For they have not rejected you, they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. The pastor says, verse 7 shows they rejected Yahweh, who brought them out of Egypt, and protected them all the way through without the Israelites even owning an army. So notice, they rejected the person that was helping them. They rejected Yahweh, the person that protected them, brought them out of Egypt, protected them even though they didn't have an army. He also parted the sea before them. The land dried up for them, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground. Only for them, the waters parted and formed a wall on either side. They didn't stay parted. They returned to normal after the children of Israel crossed the sea safely. to safely continue their journey to the house of Yahweh at Abil. And that is where they were given the opportunity to learn and practice righteousness, which brings peace, joy, love, and healthy minds and healthy bodies. The waters obeyed Moshe, but they did not stay parted for the Egyptian army. So they had the opportunity to learn the same things that we're learning. They had the opportunity to learn how to receive healthy minds, how to receive healthy bodies, how to get peace, how to get all these things. But what did they do? They rejected it. They wanted to be like everybody else. They wanted to be like all the other nations. They didn't want the rules. They wanted freedom from Yahweh's laws. They wanted a king. Okay, so moving on just a couple more pages, he says, the Vatican will not allow morals to be taught. He says in the year 770 AY, Yada, he starts talking about Yada and how they were tied in with the Catholic Church, but he says, in the year 70 AY, Yada at that time called the priests of Israel, Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Herodians, had their Roman army surround Jerusalem during the time when Yahweh's people were keeping the feasts of Passover and unleavened bread. The army slaughtered millions, destroyed Jerusalem, removed every stone to the house of Yahweh, called the temple, and plowed Mount Zion like a farmer's field. Now Yahweh, he foretold Yada's moves before they performed this evil, long before they did this thing. But notice, the Vatican will not allow morals, rules that everyone can agree upon to be taught. Why? Because it takes away the freedom. Okay? It doesn't allow them to bring in money. It doesn't keep people in the churches. Okay, so I just want to encourage everyone, go back every single week. Pastor puts out these press releases. I don't remember exactly what the one from this week was, but I started reading it, and the things that he's teaching are the same things that he's been teaching for many, many years. So just keep focused, set a goal in your mind, and reach for it. So with that, if you all please stand, I have the great honor and privilege to turn it over to the great Deacon Tsephanyah Hawkins.
Shalom. Please be seated. If you remember last Sabbath, great Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins spoke, as well as Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins, both spoke on the showdown. Remember the Kohan said to get ready to write that down? Well, as it turned out, Yeshua, our high priest, spoke on the showdown too. 3 hours before they did. At 7:31, in the parking lot, as I was pulling in, there was three of us in the parking lot, myself and the two parking lot attendants. And they weren't paying attention. They were singing, as usual. And I got a picture of this message that Yeshua brought out. Would you like to see it? Or do you want to believe without seeing? Prove all things? Okay. This is the picture. And if we take this picture and darken it, it tends to pop out so you can see what we're looking at. Now, we turn it this way, and we zoom in, and this is the image right here that we're looking at. And what you're seeing there is Yisrayl Hawkins right here on the phone, and right here you're seeing a king of the East standing in front of him. Three more seconds to identify it. Okay, now I got to show you. Right there's what we're looking at. Right here's his Kepha. Right here's his eyes. There's the phone. Right here's the king of the East. There's his eyes. And then right here, you see that phylactery box on his head? I think I figured out what they keep in that. Extra needles. Down here, you can see he's presenting Israel with a white stone. Now, I don't think that's the white stone of acquittal. I think that is if you don't get off that phone, I'm going to hit you with this stone. So you can see that that's actually a threat. If you'll turn to page 386 in your book of Yahweh, page 386, Ezra 4:21. It says, now issue an order and make those men cease their work, so this city may be rebuilt. And this story is talking about they're rebuilding the temple. And what I want to point out is their MO, how they're doing the same thing in this day and age. And jump down to verse 23, halfway through it. It says, they immediately went to those of Yada living in Jerusalem and compelled them by a show of weapons to cease their work. By a show of weapons. And that's what we're seeing here. So the work on the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem ceased. So if we look at the numbers associated with this miracle, we'll see that Yahweh reveals their plans that the kings of the east have to stop the work. And he not only shows it in this picture, but he also shows it in the numbers. And this is the numbers, same way I do it every time. Picture number is 5619, picture size, picture date, picture time, and then the input job when I had these pictures dropped off, and the output job, they assigned it a new number when I pick it up. The strong exhaustive concordance is what I was using, and in the Hebrew, I don't even try to attempt to pronounce these words. I just go straight for their meanings. But you'll see it's to cast, to throw stones. Lapidation. And lapidation is the act of stoning. Now that right there proves that this miracle is from Yahweh because the two match. It's just not a random cloud picture done by dynamic beings. The act of stoning nowadays in this day and age, they don't stone. They apply accusations and take you to court and sue and stuff like that. Picture size means united, all together, one. Picture date is 9/17, means servile, which is short for servitude. Picture time, wainscoting. Now, wainscoting is the act of covering a wall with a hard surface, not like paint or wall covering, wallpaper. And it's of 730, the cedar tree. From 729 means to be firm, which means a strong cover. And the input job means loins, and that's the region where strength is drawn from. From 2502, to pull off, to strip, equip for fight, strengthen oneself, armed man, armed soldier, draw out, prepared, take away, withdraw self. Withdraw self means to run away. Now these two first terms, to pull off and to strip, that's an identifier of who we're speaking of. That's in Micaiah 3:3. Output job number is 1031, house of a partridge. And to understand what this means, you'd have to do some study and research on the partridge. Now, a partridge it's a bird, but it's like a quail, and it has the habit of collecting other hens' chicks and brooding them as its own. And so this also is an identifier of the Roman Catholic Church when they went out converting converts and winning converts over. Same numbers in the Greek. As it were, exactly like. Picture size, captured, be taken. Picture date is heavily, weighty, burdensome, grievous. And it's from 922, abundance, authority, weight. Picture time is inexpressible, unspeakable, outspokenly. And this right here is revealing secrets. This is outspoken about the unspeakable. Now, only Yahweh can reveal the secret things. Our input job is even I, me, in likewise, both me also, and Yahshua himself is referencing to himself that this is also coming against him. Output job number, to grate the teeth in rage. And this is the attitude that they've got. Now, what this means is very simple. The message is clear that this roving army that gathers converts, not her own, is going to gather all its strength to draw out, to take away, and try to convert all those who stand united in servitude to Yahweh, and stone them with an abundance of false accusations and threats. It's going to be exactly like the days of old, when the Holy Roman Empire went out conquering and capturing converts. It's going to be heavy, burdensome, and grievous. The authorities will also come against Yahshua himself. Now, Yahshua doesn't show the outcome of this. He only reveals their secret plans. Yahweh foretold it, and he's going to allow it to come upon us, but the gates of hell will not prevail. What Yahshua does show, using a little humor, is that this is going to be scary, and that we will stand behind Israel. If you see right here, it's the donkey colt standing behind Israel. Let me help you with that. Right there. See the donkey colt standing behind Israel? It's a little worried. It's a little scared. But Israel's on the phone. We know who he's on the phone with. That represents the connection with Yahweh, which this priest is threatening to break that connection. And he doesn't look scared. Israel does not look scared. And it's probably because he knows that we got his back. So that's the message we received last Sabbath, 3 hours before the great Kohan Yisrayl spoke and the Kohan Benjamin Krause spoke. So if you all please stand. Remember to get ready. Write that down. I'd like to introduce the great Kohan Benjamin, or Kepha Hawkins. Sorry.
Praise Yahweh. Y'all may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You know, all of us Hawkins look alike, so I tell you that this is truly a miracle. What the great Deacon had just brought out. I want to point something out to your attention here. Remember the date when he just showed you the picture? Look at this on this latest prophetic word here, Psalms 91, verse 7. Okay, that date that he just gave you for that picture was last week. That was 9/17. But look what's taking place. It's a very scary scenario for the world, isn't it? And notice something here. Not coming anywhere near us. And that's what this is about. That's what I want to speak about. That word 9:17, which he just kind of went over, carries that connotation of being heavy, difficult. It comes from this word, which comes from 926. And I just wanted everybody to turn their book of Yahweh to page 926, because it actually shows you the protection that Yahweh gives his house. And we can't ever forget this. This is Colossians 2 and verse 16. He says, "Therefore, let no man condemn you for doing these things, for eating and drinking in the observance of a feast day, or of a new moon, or a Sabbath day, which are a shadow from the things to come." This is where that word traces back to. Now, I don't know if everybody remembers this. This is from last year's calendar, but it's showing the four-colored rainbow, and you see the date 6/8/14. Now, this is actually a combination here. If you go back and rehearse the sermons, the first four-colored rainbow was seen on 6/8/14, but the one with the straight slant and the golden drop there that you see at the bottom was actually about a month and a half later. I'm just wondering if anybody remembered the number that represented that golden drop. I know these numbers are difficult to keep in your head, but it was the number 96. We've heard a lot about that number lately. 96. Let me move this. And I'll try to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so 96, it means to flow, it means a drop, a reservoir, but a reserved supply. You know, when I saw that in the meaning, I started thinking about what Pastor was saying about this sixth year and how we have such an abundance. You know, I was joking with somebody the other day. I said, 2011, I mowed my lawn once. You know, this year I've got to mow it every week and it's not enough. You know, it just, everything is growing in such abundance this year. You know, Yahweh is giving us a reserve supply, but this gets better. I just wanted to rehearse this topic and get you familiar with that number 96 because, like I said, it was really a miracle that the great Deacon was just talking about, you know, this miracle in the clouds, because what I wanted to talk about today was something that took place. This was back on 9/1/16. So this has been about 3 weeks ago, and I know sometimes it's kind of hard to see. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. There we go. Okay. This was a rainbow that was here for a long time on 9/1. I saw it in Abil as we were driving home, but it wasn't until I got on 603 and I looked at it that I realized, to me, I could only see four colors in the rainbow. So I wanted to take a picture of it, and I didn't realize at the time what I was looking at above it. But I don't know how many can see that number above it, the 97. Okay, and let me just move this for a second so I can get some definitions here. Okay, so 97 is a double of 96. It's a dual of 96. It actually means a double reservoir. But let's turn over to Isaiah 61, because Yahweh is showing us a few things. He's showing us His protection. He's showing us what we have to look forward to. Great joy. Great joy. Great things are taking place right now. And it's the house of Yahweh is coming to a completion. We're entering into another stage, if you will. Isaiah 61, and I'll just read through 1 through 3 real quick. It says, "The Spirit of Yahweh my Father is upon me." Oh, I forgot to mention that the time of that cloud picture was 6:15, and I didn't think that really had any significance until late last night. But the word 6:15, it means a prisoner. All right, to be in bonds. So with that in mind, Isaiah 61, "The Spirit of Yahweh my Father is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to preach the glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, to open the prison of those who are bound, to proclaim Yahweh's year of release, and the day of judgment, to comfort all who mourn." In verse 3, "To appoint to those who mourn in Zion, to ordain them beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, the garment of praise instead of the spirit of heaviness. Remember that word 9:17 that he just went over. Okay, because just after services last week, remember there was a bunch of terrible things that took place. Riots, bombings, stabbings, a very heaviness upon the earth. But it wasn't here, was it? So they may be called trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh. Okay, look down to verse 7. He says, instead of your shame, you will receive double honor. Double honor. And instead of confusion, they will rejoice in their portion. Now, you'll just keep those words, rejoice, in your mind, because you're going to see this also. Because it's number 97. It is describing this, what I just pointed out. But also in the Greek, you can see it's describing us. It's describing what we're attaining right now. Pure, remember the golden drop? Pure, unadulterated, guileless, without guile. Let's turn to Yeketska. Hold your place in Isaiah 61 because we will be going back there eventually. But turn to Yeketska 44. Going the wrong way. Yeketska 44. All right, and we're going to look at verse 15. Where he says, but only the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, who keep the charge of my sanctuary. Okay? These things are all conditional, what Yahweh offers us. And it's important, that we pay extra detail to everything, every instruction that we see in the house of Yahweh, every instruction that we get in the house of Yahweh. We have this time period to prove ourselves loyal and obedient, and we need to be doing it. We need to be striving hard to prove ourselves, because this time is very, 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 very short. But he says, even though most of the children of Israel go astray from me, they will stand before me to minister before me, and they will be gathered together to me. Remember, Pastor said last week, this gathering, it's done with words. And they're the finest, the choicest, the best. Those who have been judged as guiltless. Okay, that's what this is describing here. And you can see Revelations 14, 4 through 5. I'm not going to turn there right now, but if you can write that down and read over this, because it's showing the judgment here. I need to get the picture back up here. Okay, so you see the 97:9:7. Now, there we go. If you turn it upside down, you try to move it here and blow it up a little bit, you see it becomes a 26, 2, 6. Everybody ought to know what that number is. Every man in the house of Yahweh should be familiar. Everybody in the house of Yahweh should be familiar with the number 26. All the Tzitzits, 10, 5, 6, 5. That's Yahweh's name. 26. Remember, He's going to give us a new name. Okay, but look at the meaning. I'm going to move this again now. Remember the protection that Yahweh gives us. But so the Hebrew 26 is actually the Hebrew word Abigail. And it means my father is joy. Let's turn back to Isaiah 61. Isaiah 61, and look at verse 10. He says, I will greatly rejoice in Yahweh. My soul will be joyful in my Father, for He has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness, and as a bridegroom covers his head, like the priest with the Kepha, and as the bride adorns her with the jewels. Okay, I need to get to the second part of this word because this Hebrew word 26, it's from two words, Ab and Gil. Everybody can see that? Ab and Gil. That word Gil, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's from 1524. That's the number. Everybody should be familiar with that number because we just went over it last week. It's one of the numbers that came up last week, right? So, if you remember, it does mean a circle or an age. An age. It also means a time period. And at the bottom, it says one born at the same time, a contemporary. That's belonging to the same time period. And let's turn over to Daniel 2:44 real quick. I turned right there, so you should be able to. Daniel 2:44. Because remember, these two works go together at the same time. And, you know, I was going to mention that the very first time that the four-colored rainbow was seen was the same day that Pope Francis, Bartholomew, and Shimon Peres, and Mahmoud Abbas. They all went to the Vatican to pray together to plant an olive tree, if you remember. At that same time, Yahweh gave us that four-colored rainbow. Well, this took place... This picture that we're going over now took place 9/1/16. What was taking place with them on 9/1/16, Pope Francis and Bartholomew got together to proclaim their day of creation, their worship of creation there. It's a 33-day festival that they have a countdown. It's supposed to end October 4th on the Feast of Assisi. And if you go to their website, you know, they got the clock running like it looks like a time bomb, you know. But nevertheless, this took place on the same day that they were gathering for that, and you could see, you know, the two works going side by side, and that's what I want to show here in Daniel 2 and verse 44, because he says, "And in the days of these kings," you know, yes, they're going to be doing their work, but we need to be really focused on the rest of this. Yahweh in heaven will appoint a kingdom of priests which will never be destroyed. You get it? You know, it'll never be destroyed. Nor will the kingdom be left to another people, but it will break to pieces and consume all these other kingdoms, and it will stand forever. Okay, that's what's working right here, and that's why we don't need to be afraid of these... You know, they will. They're going to try to make us afraid. Well, we need to stand just like that picture showed us. We need to stand right where we know we're at. You know, because Yahweh is the only hope this world has. We've got to realize that. We've got to recognize that. Now, the other number, 26, in the Greek, this goes right along with everything else, is agape. You should know that word. Because it means the love feast. It means love. You know, remember that. Agape means love. And it's used, I don't know if you see that, 116 times. I thought that was interesting because if you go back to this calendar, I know it's on there. Oh yeah, there it is. If you go back to this picture, remember age, remember that word, and it was exactly 116 days since the first sign was given to our overseer that this was seen. So there's that number popping up again. This word love, number 26, used 116 times. Now, I wanted to cover one more thing because there was something else covered last week. I can get through my pile of stuff. There was a distance measured. There it is. There was a distance measured from New York to Abilene. And the word meant beloved. It was 17 something or another. There it is. 1730. You remember that? Okay, so Yahweh is showing, he's showing in these things an approval. You know, he's showing that this is his beloved work. This is Yeshurun, my beloved Yisrayl. Okay, there should be no doubt at all in our mind of you know where we stand in prophecy and you know the fact that Yahweh is in 100% in support of this work. You know, he's showing us over and over and over these same very things, that we, the house of Yahweh, are recognized. We're recognized by the Creator of the universe as his work. And when he says hands off, that means hands off. And we've got to believe that. All right? Remember, don't be the fearful and unbelieving. You know, please don't fall into that trap. You know, Yahweh gives us, you know, I was telling somebody at work the other day, a lot of times, you know, we just need to rehearse these issues in our mind. If you're struggling in a particular area, Yahweh's already given us the ammunition to stand on, to fight these carnal things that are in our mind that we struggle with every day. We just have to refresh our memory. You know, praise Yahweh. Stealing, you know, we've been taught all about stealing and stuff, but if you're having trouble in that area, go back and rehearse it. And it gives you the strength to turn from sin. But you have to feed this spirit. Okay? We have a very, very short time left to do so. Well, we'll be feeding the spirit forever. We have a very, very short time to prove to Yahweh that we're going to do it forever. You know, so be working hard at this. You know, there's nothing more important in the world than overcoming sin and proving to Yahweh where we're really at. You know, where our heart is. And with that, I'm going to try to gather all my papers here. And I'd like to turn the services over to one of the great priests in the house of Yahweh, the great Kohan, Shaul Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom. You may be seated, brothers and sisters. If you could please get your pens and pencils and notebooks. I hope you already got them ready. But get them ready. We have a lot of information here to cover today. Because brethren, brothers and sisters, this is it. All right, we are here. We are at this gate. The Yahweh's about to finish this thing up and let things go. And this is it. We've got to pay attention to this. We've got to put this into our lives in full force. If we haven't been already, then we're lacking, and we need to get past this lacking, and we need to start taking this seriously. Taking this plan, taking the teachings, taking everything Pastor has showed us, because we are here, brethren. We are here at the showdown right now, and we're going to talk about this showdown. We got a lot of different things to cover today. We're also going to cover about the Sabbath year here and the various things we need to be doing, and it's not going to be like a Talmud, but we're going to have a few guidelines here. But we've got to take this fully seriously and show Yahweh beyond a shadow of a doubt where our heart is and what we desire. Are we going to desire this world and the curses that it brings and the suffering we see? Or do we really and truly want to be a part of this kingdom that's going to put an end to it all? All the suffering, all the misery, all the heartache. Well, I want to start back at the beginning of this plan And we need to get a few things, rehearse a few things firmly in our minds, so that, because everything fits in a context. None of Yahweh's laws, none of Yahweh's plan is like a little separate entity that sits off by itself. It's all interrelated, it's all interconnected, and it's all to the completion of this plan of Yahweh. If we really, really want to be a part of this, or do we want to perish with this world and hang on to it and go up in flames with it? But when Yahweh created this earth and the heavens that govern it, and nobody understands why Yahweh did this and how He did this. The one that was supposed to inherit in Genesis 49, the scepter, says it's now, the one that's got it now says it's all a fairy tale. All right, we got here by accident. It was just a roll of the genetic dice and a few molecules joined together. It was all by accident. Well, they are an accident waiting to occur, a train wreck waiting to occur, but that's not Yahweh's intention. Yahweh created everything purposefully and went step by step with it. But Yahweh created this earth that we sit on and the heavens that surround it and govern it and protect it for the purpose of having a place that He could let His plan unfold and come to completion. Keep that in mind, completion. Remember, what number stands for completion and perfection? 7, okay? 7. Keep that number in your mind there. And more will be brought out about the numbers, because I'm sure this is going to open up a lot more numbers. But this is what the purpose was. No one but the house of Yahweh understands that at all. And they don't even know what His plan, if they figured out or thought that He had a plan, they got no idea what His plan is even for or what it is. But Yahweh's plan is represented by a calendar week. Okay? A calendar week. And each day is going for 1,000 years. And Yahweh gave mankind 6,000 years to go His own way. Remember, He let them go their own way. Whatever they purpose to do will not be held back from them. At the same time, Yahweh said, I'm going to pull some out. One of a family, 2 of a city, a few out of the jaws of the lion here, over this 6,000 year period. And He's going to make them He said, I'm going to make them in my image and likeness, with my perfect righteous character, perfect, harmless, helpful, life-giving, life-sustaining character. This was Yahweh's plan. And Yahweh, when he created mankind and put them on the earth, put Adam and Eve in the garden, He gave His perfect laws to them and told them to guard and keep this way. We have the word work in the book of Yahweh. And dress, I think, is the word in the King James, but it means to guard it. And yes, it is work. It takes work to guard and keep this way. This was the job given to mankind. And the promise was, if you guard and keep it, you'll live 70 years and die. Was that it? No, you'll live forever in joy, in peace, in abundance. No tears, no lacks. No diseases, no fighting, no wars. If we would guard and keep it. And we're going to be talking about one of the ways Yahweh told us to guard and keep it. But this means to obey all of Yahweh's laws. Not some of Yahweh's laws. Not 611, 610. Well, what's 3 out of 613? What's a few here? That's the only way to guard and to keep it going the way Yahweh originally made it. Well, what's the first thing that occurred? Turn over to Genesis 3. Along comes Satan. Here, along comes an influence. Here, this influence of Satan. Now, if you remember back in Genesis 1, 2, after Yahweh created the heavens and the earth, then the original sons here, they didn't keep Yahweh's way. These original sons, most of them went astray, as we'll read. And they came and they trespassed on the earth and they turned it into a wasteland for their own pleasure. Their own pleasure. All right, keep that word in mind too. They did it for their own pleasure. And this is what the idea behind this influence here that came to mankind in Genesis 3. You know, has Yahweh indeed said? Planting that doubt. And now those weren't the only words. It wasn't one sentence. She's pretty powerful, but I doubt if she accomplished it with just one sentence. There was some back and forth going on here. It's condensed here. But that was the gist of it. Did Yahweh really say this? Do we have to? You know, are you for real? I didn't hear him say that. Was it that Abil, the guy that said it? Well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Listen, you can do a little bit of this. You can do, did he really mean that? I think you're interpreting what he said. Or I think he's giving an interpretation. Yahweh wants you to be joyous. He wants you to have fun. He wants you to go out and enjoy things. You know, look at this pig with an apple. Wow, doesn't that look tasty? You know, and because that was the one thing. Look at all the great stuff we can do on the Sabbath. That's another thing, you know, that they taught. And we'll go into some more of this, of what they're actually teaching and promoting. But this is before the curses had an opportunity to fall on this earth, remember. This was in the very beginning. The real curses hadn't started coming, so maybe it would be okay. You know, I can still go to the house of Yahweh and do that. This is okay. I'll still show up for services. Yeah, this will be fine. Well, you know, maybe not this week, but we'll go next week. You know, you can do both. You can do both. You can have a little bit of Yahweh's way, and this is what's been put in the minds. Does anybody on the face of the earth even recognize this? That this is what's going on in the human mind? That this is what's being presented? I don't care what level of university, psychiatrists, psychologists, they have no understanding. They're clueless as to how their own mind was made and how it works. And it goes back, they have no clue of why they're even here. Except pretty soon they're going to be, their main goal is going to be finding a place to hide from the nuclear destruction. You know, I thought we were supposed to be safe. I thought this was supposed to work out okay. You know, but this is the way Yahweh made mankind, that he could be influenced, that he would be subject to the influence of Satan. And he made us that way on purpose. Here he gives us his law. He creates a perfect world, gives us his laws that if it would have been followed perfectly, it would have stayed perfect. But then he made mankind a little bit off. And we're all a little bit off, okay? We're all a little tilted inside. Because he put something in us, but it had a reason. It wasn't to make sport of us or ridicule mankind. Or look how stupid they are. You know, that wasn't the reason. Remember, the goal of Yahweh is to create a family just like he is. And Yahweh's name means I choose. I choose to be righteous. Well, you've got to be able to choose. Well, look, you know, and look what he did with mankind here. Let's look in Genesis 4. In verse 7, now here we see an angry Cain, and then we see why. And in verse 7, if you do righteousness, will you not be accepted? Well, yeah, they were given righteousness first. That was the first instructions they had. That was the original teachings. That was the only thing that was in their mind. Now, they still had this other part here. And if you do not do righteousness, sin is crouching at your door. The desire to sin is with you. Yes, Yahweh put it there. Now, they weren't presented with the argument until it came there in Genesis 3, but Yahweh created us with this desire. Do you recognize it in your own self? Do you fight it, or do you make excuse and try to satisfy it in one way or the other? This is what Yahweh is trying to see here. And this is why He made this, where a part of our mind, the carnal mind, Shaul called it, is always trying to find a loophole, a way to sin. It's the enemy within. If we didn't have that inside of us, we could lock ourselves in a room and we would never have an influence to sin. We would never be tested. We would never be tempted. We would never even hear about another way. Wouldn't that be great? But we wouldn't prove to Yahweh that we would choose it. Because who's our own worst enemy is ourselves. Our own inclinations, our own wants. I want to. I want to. I'm this. I'm that. I. You know, they say there's no I in team. There's no I in Yahweh either. All right? We need to get our minds off of I in order to prove ourselves to Yahweh. This is what He's looking for, brothers and sisters. This is why it's so important at this time period. We have to learn to put our own selves, our own ways, our own thoughts of what's right and wrong, our own wants and desires, we have to put them down. We have to. If we want to be, and we have to put them down and choose Yahweh's way instead, if we want to become in the image and likeness of Yahweh. If we want Yahweh to trust us, this is what we got to do. We put it down so we can, Yahweh can prove to Yahweh that we will always resist the pulls and influences of Satan. We'll always resist it. We won't ever give in, not ever. You know, the original sons of Yahweh didn't remain obedient to Yahweh. Satan didn't either. Satan didn't remain obedient, as we know. All right, and now Yahweh is using that and that force, that spiritual forces that Shaul wrote about. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Yahweh used that and allowed that to influence so we would fight against it. If, you know, that's the only thing that we can fight. If, you know, Yahweh doesn't want fighting, but we have to resist and fight that tendency, that built in, and we have to recognize it the minute it wells up in us and squash it. That's our job. That's our work. That's the work of Yahweh within us, all while doing the assigned jobs and taking care of the needs and everything else. That's our work that we do on ourselves. No one can do it for us. You know, the Savior didn't die so that we could just give in to temptation and do whatever we want because He's got us covered. No. He died that we could pay that penalty and then turn our lives over, because only those who repent and convert are going to be covered by that sacrifice and will receive this kingdom. But Satan, the original sons, and then Satan, and then their organization that they formed, the Catholic Church, which started right there in Genesis, has sought ever since to stop and kill off and the work of Yahweh and stop the plan of Yahweh. But what they've learned over these nearly 6,000 years now is that they can't do it. All right? They can't stop this plan. But what they're trying to do is to get mankind to kill themselves. They're not going to come down here or up here and slay mankind themselves. They're going to talk mankind into doing it themselves. We didn't drop a bomb. What bomb? I don't have any bombs. They made them. They did it. All right? This is the only way. Her only hope is that mankind would destroy the earth and the heavens surrounding it with the nuclear bombs. That's the only way that she can get this to stop, and get mankind to destroy himself. And when you think about it, they really didn't have to try really hard. It wasn't a hard sell, because all they had to do is throw in a little bit of pleasure with the poison, and mankind took it, by the barrel full. They had it on back order. Yeah, we want more of that stuff, what they got. Well, now the peak of sin is here, and the peak of suffering is here, and life is nearly about to be wiped out. But it was the easy way. There's work in guarding and keeping the way of Yahweh. There's effort. There's effort in telling that voice inside to shut up, and I'm going to keep Yahweh's laws. Yeah, but wouldn't it be cool? Oh, just for a few minutes. Just a little bit. That takes work. That takes effort. Oh, why not coast the easy way? Satan said, you'll still make it. Matter of fact, I'm going to come down to earth and protect you. She said, and that's what they believe. They don't believe she was cast out of heaven. They believe she's the God Savior that sacrificed herself to come down and help mankind get through this nuclear thing and come out and clean up and be the bosses again. That's what they fell for that lie too. It's really a ridiculous scenario when you think about it, except when you see the mass amounts of suffering. But this is what they got. And Yeshua said, well, broad is the way and wide is the gate. And many there are that go that way. It's really an easy ride to go that way. They're steered that way. They don't have the other influence like we do. And that was for a reason also. We don't have time to go into that. But there's no resistance in the world to sin. They fall right into it. Even the ones that come against certain sins, like the ones that don't want the sodomy in the schools, and the lady that didn't want to fill out the certificates. But I'll bet your bottom dollar she went to church on Sunday and kept Christmas. But that's okay. She was against this other. No, they're still not the house of Yahweh, even though they can see certain parts of it. Yahweh's only dealing with us in this room. He's not dealing with the world right now, and that's going to play a big thing in what we got coming up next here. But you can see what the Catholic Church has brought to this world. Just look at the world. Any news at all. Do you see any great news? I don't care if it's local, national, international. It's nothing but wars, fightings, bombings, killings, riots. You want to go out there and get caught up in a riot? What city is next? They don't publish that, where they're going to have their next riot. So you can stay out of there. You may get caught in the middle of it. And then the diseases. And then, they're doing this with the fighting to bring forth martial law and trap the people. Why do they have to build a camp? Why don't they just circle the city that the people are in? Easy for them to control it. Because remember, the goal here that's influenced by Satan is depopulation. Now, she's promising certain ones, well, you won't be depopulated. Only these riffraff down here, only these nasty people. You guys are, You're mine. I'm going to protect you. And that's what is being put. And then you see the sicknesses, the diseases, the babies born with syphilis, suffering. And we want to partake in that? We want a little bit of that? Do you know they just recently found leprosy in the United States? Again, leprosy, where the skin falls off and everything. This is back. And then on top of that, we got the nations lining up for nuclear war, as we just talked about here. And I don't think nobody, not even the scientists who do the tests, really know and have any experience with the total devastation that's going to result from these nuclear bombs. We think, that's just going to be an explosion. It's going to be okay, And then we'll go to Walmart afterwards, There's going to be nothing there, okay? So then, is that what we're waiting for? And then we're going to turn to Yahweh with all of our heart, soul, and might? Oh yeah, Yahweh, I would have kept the laws. I would have, and I will from now on, now that there's nothing there to go to. But this is the influence of the original sons and the Catholic Church and Satan on every leader of every nation on earth. That's what Revelation 17 tells us. Every leader of every nation. You want to argue about who should be president? You mean you want to argue about who's going to do the will of the Vatican? Because that's what they do. Down to a person, man or woman. Doesn't matter. Left or right. Middle of the road, liberal, conservative, whatever they want to call themselves. They all do the same thing. We need to wake up, people, of what's going on in this world, because we are shielded from it to a great degree here at the house of Yahweh. So we kind of have a tendency to forget the danger that we're facing. But believe you me, you are staring the enemy right in the face. I don't mean me, maybe when you look in the mirror, but we're in that situation, okay? This is the showdown, all right? But here's the thing, Yahweh's plan is to pull us out. The top part, he says we're the top part of his family, and he's pulling us out. Out, O-U-T, look that up, out. Out of this world of Satan's, out of the mixture, which any amount of mixture, I don't care if it's a little molecule, turns that cup into a cup full of abominations. Doesn't matter what the mixture is, if you mix it any little bit, you're drinking a cup of abomination. That's how powerful sin is to destroy the righteous character. And that's why Yahweh is not going to allow it in his kingdom. And each one of us sitting here in this room, listening over the internet, whether you've made it here yet to the house of Yahweh or not, or your desires are toward the house of Yahweh, Yahweh is telling us to come out of this world. Now, you may not be able to move across the face of the earth just yet over here, but you can come out of the world, out of the practice of sin, out of the way of thinking, out of the seeking of your own way. We're at the very end here, and if we don't come out now fully, we are going to be outside the kingdom, as Revelation 22 says. We're going to be outside. Yahweh's not going to allow anything that followed his original sons, any way that they bring forth, to enter in. I want to show you here the calendar, the 2016 calendar. Let me see if I can... All right, he says, I pray that you'll be strong now and brace yourself and get ready for the battle, because there's going to be a showdown between Yahweh's house and Satan, and she's going to try to destroy the house, but Yahweh says He will not allow this to take place. And then here is the quote on the Jumbotron or whatever it is. The ultimate showdown of righteousness versus evil being played out now, says Yisrayl Hawkins. Now it's being played out in our minds also. We're the battlefield. Now before we get into that, I wanted to point out here, if you see 10:10 here at sundown, and then starts 10:11, that's the Day of Atonement. You'll see third tithe year ends. Third tithe year, this was a 6th year that we're in right now. So we're fixing to enter the 7th year, or Sabbath year. And I want to point out something else here really interesting. Let me see. This is the calendar from 1995 to 1996, which was the last Jubilee year that the house of Yahweh celebrated. Can you believe that? That was the last Jubilee, and we are now 21 years from that last Jubilee year. 21 years. The 21st year will start at the beginning of the Day of Atonement there. So we're going into a Sabbath year here, and I want to get into this because this all ties in with this showdown. But we are at this ultimate showdown at the Okie Corral. All right? We are at the Okie Corral, and we're at this showdown here. All right? And this showdown, I want to show you the scripture that shows us the showdown here. All right, in Zechariah, turn over to Zechariah 5 and verse 9 on page 719. Zechariah 5 and verse 9. This is what built up to this showdown and brought forth the fact that there even could be a showdown. There couldn't be a showdown at all before this. And he says, Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, 2 women, the last 2 heirs of the house of Yahweh, sent with commandment, sent with Yahweh's laws, by Yahweh's laws. And notice, I want you to underline this and focus on this. The Spirit of Yahweh came to overspread or overshadow them, and they were covered with the covering of saints. And they exalted. They didn't try to find loopholes in it. They exalted it. They magnified it. They extolled it. They praised it. And not with lip service, but with action. Yahweh says not the hearers of the law will be justified, but the doers. The doers, doing it with every ounce of energy. Not looking for a way around it, but doing it. The ephah, which is a standard of perfection. There could be no showdown with this without this standard of perfection. And there had to be these 2 women, 2 eras to bring it. It wasn't here before that. You had a King James with God in it that turned the people to God. Don't follow God, but here it says, well, God this and God that. What? Don't be like God, but be like God? That was nothing but confusion. But here's the showdown here, brothers and sisters. Separating the way of the world from the way of Yahweh. Separating it. like with a squiggly line, leave a little on the plate, separating it completely, a complete separation. They're two worlds apart. Don't mix them. And this is where we stand now. We're face to face with the original sons and Satan in the fight for our life, brothers and sisters. This is it. Well, turn over to Ephesians 6 before you get any ideas. Well, Ephesians 6:12, we wrestle not only against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual forces of the evil one in the heavens. Spiritual. Hold your place there in Zechariah, because this spiritual forces, and he's talking about in Ephesians, is trying to overshadow you with a different spirit. And it comes in a bunch of different ways. But notice here with the showdown and the two women, they were overspread, overshadowed, covered over with the laws of Yahweh, the Spirit of Yahweh. The things that bring life, the only things that bring life. That's it. But turn over to 2 Corinthians. That's where I wanted to go. Before we get, this Western showdown thing too deep in our mind. All right. On page 906, 2 Corinthians 10:4. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. No, they're not guns and swords and knives and bombs and planes, etc., etc. But mighty in Yahweh for pulling down strongholds. All right, these are the words of Yahweh. This is your weapon in the fight against this evil world. And if it's not in your mind, demolishing arguments, the arguments in your mind that try to get you to take that mixture, demolish them with the words of Yahweh, destroying every high thing that arises in your thoughts. Oh, we can do this. This is okay. We don't have to come out completely. And it's not just a geographical. I'm not talking about, we got to live on earth, okay? Right now we can't jump in a rocket ship and go somewhere else, and that wouldn't even be right if we could right now, because Yahweh wants us to witness what's taking place on the earth. Here it is, bringing under control every thought. Now, you can't bring your neighbor's thoughts under control. Grab them by the shake them, get control. Your own thoughts into the obedience as the Messiah. Yes, Yeshua did the same thing. Here, Yeshua did the same thing. But he's commanding that we come out of this world. And you can put 2 Corinthians 6 and Revelation 18:4 there in your notes. Come out of this world. What's he talking about? The teachings of the world. The Catholic Church who teaches, oh, women, take off your veils, take off your rings, you're free. Take off your clothes. That's what they do. And the men do the same thing. Be attractive. Draw attention to yourself. Pastor mentioned Jezebel there, who put extra paint on her face and stuck her head out so all the men gathered there could see her. Instead of wearing her veil and being modest and saving that for her own husband. But the men do this too. They teach you men. Approach women. Approach them on the internet. Approach them on the street. Approach them on the store. It doesn't matter. Just approach them. This is what they're teaching. This is the Catholic Church that's teaching this. Well, they probably teach now men approach other men, but, run from that too. What are you doing out there anyways? And they do it through the music. Oh, you don't like the House of Yahweh music? It doesn't make you move inside? Move? What are you trying to move? You know, you should sit that thing still in a chair and get your mind on the scriptures, okay? Speaking of your face, here, you know, who do you think invented Facebook? Okay? Facebook. Get your face out there on Facebook. Oh, put your children's out there too. Oh, it's only available to my friends. Really? Your Catholic friends that are involved in this too? Okay. Yeah, you can have House of Yahweh friends and Catholic friends. You know? Facebook. If your face is out on Facebook, your name is in danger of getting out of another book. Yeshua's book. Okay? Get your face off of Facebook. Get your face out of Facebook and put your face in the book. One guy told me one time. All right? This is straddling the world. Partaking of the world. Oh, but I'm preaching about the way of Yahweh. Really? Who sent you? The House of Yahweh's already got on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever grams they got. Now, they probably got they got all these new social medias. Do you know what it's designed for? Do you know what it's designed for? To hook you up with someone else who wants to sin. And even if they're sinning by causing you to pull away from Yahweh and pull away from your time with Yahweh. Get your face, if it's on there, I don't know if you can shut it down or get it off of there, but believe me, unless your face is on Yahweh.com, we don't need to see it on Facebook, okay? Come on, brothers and sisters, is it that unobvious of what the original sons are pulling the world to do? Do you know if the police had gone door to door with a clipboard asking people their private details, they'd have got the door slammed in their face. But, we got a better way. Put it on the computer. Oh, you can upload it. You can contact and message everybody. So, man, they all did it. They know I'm leaving the house to go to the store. The robbers watch it. Okay, they're leaving. All right, time to move in. And they do. They break into people's homes because they post there that they just left on vacation. Oh, we'll send you pictures from the Bahamas. Really? Nobody's home. Go after it. And they do this. It's in the news, brothers and sisters. They actually do this. But we want to be a part of that. We want to give in to this influence. You know, it's like saying, in Yahweh's saying, He's not going to allow, the sons to enter in. Turn over to 2 Kepha. I have to jump ahead a little here, but 2 Kepha 2 and verse 4. And Pastor read this just the other week, but, we got to hear it and really go over it and let it sink in. For if Yahweh did not spare the original sons who turned against His way, but will cast them into abyss, delivering them into chains and reserved for judgment. In other words, they're not going to be allowed in His everlasting kingdom. Nothing that defiles. So He's not going to allow them, but we're saying, oh Yahweh, spare us though. Even though we're doing what they did, please spare us. Let this be the place of protection for us. And we bring in the same way of life, the same activities that the original sons did or inspired or behind and are pushing and promoting right now. In every corner of the earth, they have control over every nation. and they're pushing this, and we want to be a part of it, turn around and tell Yahweh, but spare me, Yahweh. How silly is that? Is Yahweh really going to take that seriously? And we can call ourselves a saint? And that the laws are overshadowing us? He's setting us there in Zechariah there. He's showing what we must become like, because this was the same way Yeshua lived. And in Isaiah, look at Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53:8. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who will declare his generation? We're supposed to be his generation. That's on page 564. But are we going to become like the ones that put Yeshua in prison or built these prisons? And I'm talking about the original sons who inspired it, and we follow that same inspiration? And we're still going to call ourselves Yahwehs? That we belong to Yahweh? And we partake of that? No way, brothers and sisters, will Yahweh allow that to occur. But turn back over to 2 Kepha. Yahweh's not going to spare those who allow themselves to be influenced by these original sons. And we'll get into the Sabbath year, because this was all, turn back to 2 Kepha, all designed by this way of the world, was all inspired and designed by these original sons, who merely took Yahweh's laws and did the opposite with them, and made it look great, desirable, enjoyable, and yet fed mankind death at the same time, and mankind couldn't even recognize the difference between it. But we can we not? Didn't we just see that prophecy? He didn't take it out in the wilderness, build some abandoned building and leave. He did things to get people to show up there, namely us. And so we could sit at his feet and learn this way of Yahweh. Learn the difference. Learn how to separate ourselves from the ways of the world and join ourselves to the way of Yahweh. This is what he did. This is what was going on in Zechariah. And did not spare, back in verse 5 of 2 Kepha 2, the ancient world, but saved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of unrighteous, those who were lawbreakers, and condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction by reducing them to ashes, but delivered righteous Lot, who was deeply grieved by the filthy conduct of the wicked. How deeply grieved are we by the filthy conduct of the wicked when we partake of it? Does it really even bother us if we're willing to do the same things they do? Oh, it's just a little bit. That's who Yahweh's going to deliver. Yahweh knows, and that for that righteous man dwelling among them, and yes, we have to dwell in this world, and through the electronic advances that mankind made, we can see exactly everything what they do and partake with them. But he was tortured in his righteous soul, as he posted it on Facebook, from day to day, seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. And we can see and hear them even more now. But are we tortured? Or are we finding pleasure in it? Ask yourself that. Yahweh knows how to deliver the righteous out of temptations, trials, danger, even destruction, and to reserve the unjust for the day of judgment, and especially those who walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness. Lust, that's anything, it could be any desire, any want that you have. I want to do this, I want to do that. And despise authority. This is what they did. They despised authority. Look down at, let's see. Yeah, despising authority. Turn over to Hebrews 13:2. Was it Hebrews 13? No, wait a minute. Or was it Romans 13:2? Yeah, I think it's Romans 13:2. Yes, it is. It's Romans 13:2. He's, despising authority. Now, I want you to think about this, because this priest that established the work, he came with commandment, with authority to address the called out ones through sermons, through counseling, and so forth, and correct them about the differences between the way of the world and the way of Yahweh. He says in Romans 13:2, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of Yahweh. If you're resisting authority, has the Spirit of Yahweh overshadowed you? Has it overspread you like it did the ones that brought the standard of perfection? Is it really grieving you, the sins in this world? Like we just read in 2 Kepha, does it torture you? I don't think it does. If you can resist Yahweh's authority and resist what He's telling us here about coming out of this world. This is the showdown. We'll get to this Sabbath year here, but it's just a small part of this lesson that we need to get today, brothers and sisters. About we're either all in for Yahweh or we're all out. We're outside. There's no halfway. There's no 1 foot in, 1 foot out. There's no enjoying the pleasures of sin a little bit and making it into the kingdom. Now, I want you to notice the feeling of resentment that arises in you when you're corrected by the priest. Or if that priest brings it through another priest, and so on. And that feeling that arises that you don't like it. You're feeling exactly what the original sons felt right at that moment. And you need to put it down. We all do. We need to put it down. You're having a showdown moment right there. Maybe nobody can see it. It's not visible because it's going on in your mind, and you might think you're hiding it. But you're not hiding it from Yahweh because He sees everything. So we need to be able to identify this way of the world and get it out from us. Because He's not going to spare. If He didn't spare His original sons, He's not going to spare us, brothers and sisters. This new world where righteousness dwells will have none of this in it. None. And it won't have us in it if we don't start resisting this influence. And part of this influence, if you turn over to Exodus 23, it went to the Sabbath day, and you think what a resistance there is to the Sabbath day. How many are truly keeping it? You can count them on one calculator or one thumb or one. Very few of this entire world are truly keeping the Sabbath day. How many do you think keep the Sabbath year? A whole year. How many do you think in history ever kept it? Well, the scientific answer is not many. Okay, I don't know how many. It's not many. It was rejected. Like everything else that Yahweh gave, here He puts us on a planet, and the planet has to produce the food to sustain us. The food, the oxygen, the water comes up from the ground, goes into the atmosphere, comes back down, goes back in, comes back out. He put us on this planet and designed the thing to keep us alive. Well, why don't we try and kill it and see if we can still survive? That's kind of the logic. Well, why do you want to kill it? Because I can get more money. Yeah, but if we're all dead, what are you going to spend it on? Oh, well, we're not all going to die. Didn't you hear? She's going to keep some of us. We're her special guys. Think about it. But in Exodus 23, in verse 10, says, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its produce, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, so that the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. And then he talks about the actual 7th day Sabbath. I want to read you that out of the Amplified, because it adds something in the meaning, expounds on the meaning, amplifies the meaning, or magnifies the meaning here. He says in verse 11, in verse 10, 6 years you shall sow your land. And in order to sow your land, you've got to plow it up, you've got to dig it up and cultivate it. And then when they reaped its yield, remember this was an agricultural society, that when they reaped that harvest, that wasn't just food for their family, that was crops that they sold. Okay, this was an economic situation here. They sold those crops for money, and then they used that money to live on, and as well as having food for themselves. But the 7th year, verse 11, you shall release it. This is the year of release. You release it. You don't make the land work for you. You don't work the land. All right, this is what it means. This is what it's telling us here in Exodus 23. Keep this handy here. Let's turn over to Leviticus 25. In verse 2, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you. Now remember, at this point in time, Yahweh is only dealing with us, His house, right now. Those He's called out and are part of the house. So the only land that this refers to is the land that the people of the house of Yahweh own or control. Your own land. Okay? If you work out in the world, and you work as a farmer, or you work digging in the dirt out in the world, this doesn't you're not covered by this here, and you can keep your jobs and do your work. We're talking about the land owned by the people of Yahweh, owned by the house of Yahweh and by the members of the house of Yahweh. Okay? Are we clear on that part? When you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath unto Yahweh. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to Yahweh. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. Now what we're asking Because we are at this showdown, brothers and sisters, and we need to show Yahweh that we love His laws more than all else. Remember, that's what we got our ear-awled, which is contained in this law too, here about the ear-awling. And we got our ear-awled, and what did we say? We love the house of Yahweh, which stands for the name, the character, the Sabbaths of Yahweh, more than all else. More than our own wants, our own desires, and so forth. Okay? So we're asking that you do no digging on the land at all. Do everything in your power, starting the day after, Day of Atonement. You won't be doing anything anyways. You're going to be in here studying. But starting that next day, don't do everything in your power not to dig the land. That word fallow is the opposite of till or break up. And it means to work by plowing, to plow, cut, lift, turn over soil, cut into or open. So this is talking about land that you live on. All right, the dirt under your feet. Do everything in your power to leave it alone. Now, certain things are going to occur. You're going to have to step on the land, okay? We haven't found a way. You're going to have to drive across it. You may drive down your driveway and down Oak Forest and cut a rut. We'll be able to repair that. But don't start any new digging on your land. Put the shovel away. You know, the utility companies are shovel, rake, hoe, pickaxe, backhoe, whatever. The utility companies had a slogan they used to pull out, and they said, call before you dig. If you absolutely think you have to dig before you touch that shovel, pick up the phone before you pick up that shovel. Call the South office, and we'll get someone to answer your questions, okay? But we need to put it in our mind that we're going to go above and beyond the righteousness of the Pharisees. Let me tell you what the Pharisees did. They had a great little scheme here. Because remember I said it's land that we own, right? And this was told to us by our people in Israel. And you can read about it, but they said, nobody keeps the Sabbath year here. And we're like, what? Oh yeah, they sell their land to an Arab for $1. He works the land, they split the profits, and at the end of the 7th year, they buy it back. Now that's how the Pharisees taught how to keep the Sabbath year. And can we really call ourselves Sabbath keepers if we're not going to let the land keep its Sabbath? Remember Yirmiah, and when the Yahweh allowed them to go into captivity for 70 years one time. 1 year for every Sabbath that they skipped. Okay? So 7 times 70 is how many? Any guesses? 490. So there's 490 for sure years that they didn't let the land keep its Sabbaths. And look over at, oh boy. Well, it's in Leviticus 26 here. My eyes aren't picking it up. But Yahweh said, if you don't let the land rest, and if you ignore my statutes and my judgments, which includes all the things we talked about that the Catholic Church is pushing you into, with these other sins that equally cut you off from Yahweh. In verse 18, he says, the land will vomit you out. Now, how is that? How does Yahweh look upon you if the land vomits you out? But spare me, Yahweh. Is that, it's the same thing he said in Revelation 11. Here he says, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I am about to spew you out of my mouth. Doesn't sound like a sparing going on there to me, that Yahweh's going to spare us. But let's go back to Leviticus 25, because there's been some questions about this, the year of release, that it means, I borrowed a bunch of money and promised to pay it back X number a month or a week or whatever, and now I don't have to pay it. All right, is that... Let me see, Leviticus 25. That's what's been said. I hear it every sabbatical year. Pretty much it comes up. But that's not what he's talking about. That's a contractual debt, brothers and sisters, that you make a promise or a vow, and Yahweh doesn't release a vow or a promise. Okay? That's not what he's talking about at all. In Leviticus 25, oh boy. Here it is. No, it's 39. Okay, yeah, here's in verse 39. And if your brother becomes poor and sells himself to you, you shall not compel him to serve as a bondservant, that is, a slave not eligible for redemption. But as a hired servant and as a temporary resident, he shall be with you. He shall serve you until the year of Jubilee. And look at Pastor's side note there that he says in B, side note B, of verse 40, he says, if he desires to be your servant for life. Otherwise, he must be released after 7 years, or after the 6th year, on the 7th year. He must be released. Turn over to Exodus 21, and this says the same thing. This release is talking about releasing a servant who, due to debt or theft, because that's accounted for in the law also, theft, had to sell himself into servitude. In Exodus 21 and verse 2, if you buy, this is in the Amplified, if you buy a Hebrew servant as the result of debt or theft, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall go out free, paying nothing. And that is tied right to Leviticus 25:39. That's the release. In addition to the land being released, that's the release he's talking about here. But keep in mind, brothers and sisters, that we, in this last time with the high priest Yeshua, who bought us back from Yahweh, you can't sell yourself to somebody else. We've already been to the doorpost and said, I want to remain with my owner forever. So that doesn't even apply. And Yeremiah noted this too, because this is another example. I wanted to read you Yeremiah 34. If you'll turn to Yeremiah 34, because they weren't keeping this correctly. They weren't treating the brethren like brothers. Okay, they were treating them like bond servants with no hope for redemption. And Jeremiah 34:13 says, this is what Yahweh, the Father of Israel, says, I made a covenant with your fathers in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, saying, every 7 years each of you will set your brother Hebrew free, who has been forced by circumstances to sell himself to you. Well, we don't have that anymore, brothers and sisters. We don't live 100 miles or miles away, and we don't have the house of Yahweh to rely on. You know, we do have the house of Yahweh. We're not separated as many of these were, and didn't have the house to go to, because the house of Yahweh daily, weekly, helps the poor people that come to the house of Yahweh. We set them up in the work of Yahweh. Okay? When he served you for 6 years, you must let him go free from you. But your fathers did not obey me, nor incline their ears to pay attention. He says, but now, verse 16, you have turned around and profaned my name. Every one of you took back the male and female slaves whom you had set free to go where they pleased, and forced them back into bondage to be your male and female slaves. He's talking here to the Catholic Church. The ones there in Genesis 49 who had the scepter, who were supposed to be teaching the laws, but took the people back into bondage through debt. It wasn't in chains like the movies, and pastors taught us this. It wasn't like the movies show. It was in chains and bondage to an unfair economic system that neither let the people have the Sabbath, but also didn't let the land have its Sabbath days. All right? And this is the wickedness of this world here that we must turn away from, and show Yahweh that we're willing to go above and beyond here the righteousness of the Pharisees, as the so-called, put that in quotes because they weren't righteous at all. They were always looking for a way around Yahweh's laws. Let's let the land rest, because it's within our power to do so. You have a few short weeks. If there's anything you think you have to do, get it done before the Day of Atonement. Let's show Yahweh how much we love Him and His laws, and that we too, turn back over there to Zechariah, we too, like His servant, His chosen branch, who built the house, and you can read all of that in the rest of Zechariah there, because he was overspread with this same spirit. He didn't let the spirit of the world back in him, whether it's through music or social media. This is putting a spirit back in you that's contrary to Yahweh. And you're showing Yahweh that it hasn't overspread you. If you're doing this and posting your personal stuff, your face and your doings and your comings and goings and these sorts of things. If you're posting on there for the house of Yahweh, well, keep doing that. All right? If you're doing it for the house of Yahweh, but I believe Yahweh has enough power to get that message spread out there without us turning to sin and doing it. Because what kind of example are we showing? We post a post from the house of Yahweh, and then we turn around and show our faces, if that's what you want to call them. And they were covered with the covering of saints. And they exalted, magnified, extolled. All right, this is going above and beyond, brothers and sisters, and this is the attitude we need to show Yahweh, that we want nothing to do with the way of the world. Can we do it? Can we get this out before 10:10? Brothers and sisters, Yahweh is wanting to show us, and He's going to show us some amazing things. Okay? It's coming. But if, we're going to witness it. You can be on one side of the aisle, the separation, or the other of the way of the world. They're going to see it. They're not going to survive it, all of them, but they're going to see it. Or you can be with Yahweh. Turn over, we'll close here with Revelation 11. Revelation 11 and verse 18. And the nations were angry. True or false? True. They've never been angrier. It's not going to take much to set this off, brothers and sisters. And your judgment, your light, is come. True or false? Is Israel Hawkins bringing the light? Is he not the light? Praise Yahweh. And the time of the dead, that they should be resurrected and sentenced. Very close here. Very close. And that you should give reward to your servants, the prophets, and to all the saints. Those, and read that again for yourself in Zechariah 6:9, overshadowed with the laws of Yahweh, overspread, covered with the covering of saints, magnifying, extolling, and exalting the standard of perfection. That's what a saint does, and that's what we've been taught to do. And should allow those who destroy the earth, those who wouldn't let the land rest on the Sabbath, to be destroyed. Which group would you rather be in? The getting the rewards or the destroyed? That's what's facing us right now. Our decisions right now, in these next couple of weeks, and in whatever time Yahweh allots us, are going to make all the difference. Now is the time, brothers and sisters. If we've never been serious about the house of Yahweh, about the laws, we need to be serious now. May Yahweh bless your understanding. Remember, if you have any questions at all about dealing with the land, first off, let's try, go beyond, practice dropping the tool. If you have to, let's do everything in our power not to touch the earth, and call if you have a situation. Before you do anything, call first. Don't dig and then call later. Okay? Call first. May Yahweh bless your understanding. And we'll now turn the services over to the great son of Israel, Abel, for closing prayer.